wiring's up, plates are done. Let's get these things installed. I went ahead and got a jump start on getting this frame ready to accept this lower bearing plate. And all I did was remove this bracket that went across the frame here. This was my first attempt at solving my water and belt slipping issue, which this did not work. It was a big fail. Then I went ahead and removed my electrical for my battery. My battery was mounted back in here. This went through something like so. There was a mount up on the frame here to hold everything in place. I just ground that mount off. This can't be here no more since the plate's going to be coming across here. I'll relocate my battery at a later date. And since everything's out of my way now, I'm able to kind of lay this position out on the frame so I can weld this into place. And by lay it out, I do know all my measurements off the edge to the center of the shaft. I know the shaft diameter, and I know how far I want it away from this shaft here. So with all those measurements, I'll be able to grind the paint away, then take a Sharpie, draw the position that this has to sit at, and then I can clamp it in place and weld it up. And when it's all said and done, the jack shaft will have the proper distance away from that shaft. Let's get the mud out of the way. I missed. And there's the line that I will put my bearing plate up against to weld it in place. Oh yeah, that's good and solid. So I stole the jack shaft off the Alice build. I figured I can use it just for mock-up on here. Come on. Two and 3/4. So I'm going to build a riser 2 3/4. So these frame extensions I'm going to make will be a C-channel design. It's going to have a 1-inch lip on the top. It's going to come straight down 2 3/4 and then have a 1-inch lip on the bottom that'll sit on top of the frame here. The only issue is this seat spring riser thingamabob is in the way of doing a solid bottom bend. So what I'm going to do on that bottom bend is make it in steps, and by steps what I mean is I'm going to put a bend here, then leave this material not bent, and then put a bend here. So we're going to go with a 10-inch blank. We'll do a first bend at 0 to 1. We're going to leave the material unbent from 1 to 6. And then from 6 to 10 we'll put a bend on it again. And the top bend will be a solid 10-inch long bend. Let's make these. Done. My bad, the camera died while I was making these at work. But if you want to see how I would have fabricated these, if you haven't watched video 1 of the Jackshaft build, watch that where I built the bearing plates. Same process, different parts. So here's how this setup's going to look when it's said and done. Well, minus this piece, that won't be there. The frame extensions are bolted on. The front bolt up here, I'll take care of it at a later date. I have some grinding on the frame to do to make everything work there. But I am now ready to get this top bearing plate bolted down to the frame extensions. I was going to weld it, but I decided to bolt it. That way I can remove it and do a future modification to the setup at a later date. Out of all these markers, not one of these ultra fine tips work. So I'm using a pen. Don't like that. Yeah, that's better. So I'm going to give you guys a pan view of this, although it might be a crappy one, but you guys can see what it looks like fully installed. There's a tad bit more work to do to it, but that can come at a later date. I'm going to go ahead and throw the transaxle back underneath it, lock everything down, and I'll check the jack shaft for squareness to that. This frame has a little bit of flex to it. Front to back was good, but when you press down on one of the frame rails, it likes to flex the jack shaft out of skew. So if you're lock it down to the transaxle, now I can get a real legit angle on that. Come on, you. Check this one more time and see if any improvements happened whatsoever. I doubt it. And you're about to say, and you didn't get no better, and neither did you. Alright. So this jack shaft sitting how it was, forward to backwards, almost spot on, left to right, not so much. I can get left to right, I can get it straightened out, I'll just X-brace the frame. That, or I'll take this top bearing plate and the mounting holes on it, elongate them, shift the bearing plate whatever direction, and tighten the bolts back down. Either way will work. But a funny story, when I was looking for my tools, came across my exhaust for this thing. There happened to be a hole on this side of the frame over here when I was mounting these frame extensions on. Couldn't figure out what the hole was for. It was in my way, so I was like, I'll weld it shut and grind it smooth. I don't need it. Now looking at this thing, I wonder how I'm going to mount my exhaust back on here. To be continued. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.